The world seems to be going crazy. We are right in the middle of the most intense upheavals, and that's really across the board. We can see this wonderfully on the outside. The truth that is coming to light, we can feel it. Things are moving forward. But the inner processes are also quite something and can push some people to their limits. However, others feel like, wow, now I'm making huge strides forward. And this is partly because we currently have very luminous, very high energies in the field, even if it doesn't always feel that way. But these high, very luminous energies that are flooding us are also setting an incredible amount of things in motion. And ultimately, there is absolutely no escape for anyone. And today, I want to talk about the positive aspects of this, but also discuss with you what is really, really important for you right now. Because this phase we are currently in is quite new and with a few tricks. Yes, you can simply adopt a new inner attitude, a new way of aligning yourself. Yes, it's okay to resonate in order to ultimately maintain guidance for oneself and one's own life. First of all, a very warm welcome to this podcast episode in your Live Happily podcast. My name is Linda Giese, and for over 20 years, I have been a spiritual mentor, the author of the book Consciousness Next Level, and the founder of the Being Potential method. Being potentials are your strengths. Being potentials that means these are forces that already reside within you. The unfortunate thing is, through traumatic experiences, upbringing, and the education system, most of our being potentials have been trained out of us, but we can reactivate them. And how to do that, you'll find out in our upcoming free live show. It's best to bring your biggest problem with you. Tuck it under your arm, just drag it in with you. With a bit of luck, we can work on it exactly. And then you will see that it is very easy to resolve your issues and clear the blockages, making way for an absolutely amazing life in 2001. If you want to know more about it, you can find the link to the show and the free registration in the text here for this podcast. Okay, let's get started. I said it's high, luminous energies which are setting many things in motion and that there is no escape. And the other day I had an inspiration, a perception. It was also very, very exciting in terms of the imagery. You've probably experienced this before when you've stood with both feet in the sea and there were maybe some good waves. You can feel it. When the sea pulls back, it pulls you with it and can literally knock you off your feet. Or if the waves come at you, depending on how strong they are, they can also knock you over. And then when the wave recedes, it pulls you back with it. Yes, and this power is currently very, very active, especially for all those who are not standing firmly. Yes, and now one might say, okay, I often don't feel stable. And this normal emotional stability is also meant by that. But there is a completely different kind of stability, one that is absent. When we have built our life or certain areas of our life on lies, so that means everything built on lies, built on untruth, is simply unstable in itself. And now this wave of energy comes forward and then pulls back again. This up and down, as we can clearly feel, is now sweeping away everything that is not stable, and that is also a beautiful aspect for all those who, for example, those who have been wronged and who wish that those who committed the wrongs would be held accountable in some form or another, whether by life or by justice or by any other means. And this is happening now with this wave as it slowly recedes. It certainly pulls along those who are not standing firmly, who are deceiving themselves and others. And this might also be a nice glimmer of hope for all those who are in favor of processing, who support the idea that certain things need to be clarified and that a certain form of order should be restored. So those who stand firm, who have nothing to reproach themselves for, don't need to worry about 2001 either. What is also very, very important in this context is that you make sure you become stable internally. And that's what we will be talking about here today. Okay. Because if we are not stable internally, for whatever reasons, whether we have fears, insecurities, or something of that sort, it may not be classically related to lies and untruths. But if we look a bit deeper, it actually is, because we have been taught something about ourselves that is simply not true, depending on what you experienced in your childhood. For example, maybe your parents didn't have time for you, or they simply didn't understand you, or they had their own principles and stuck to their parenting methods. But you were born as a special kind of mouse, perhaps with a special mission. And you simply couldn't deal with these stubborn, rigid rules, and your needs were not recognized. And then somehow you were made to feel that you are not right, you are wrong, you can't do anything, you are not lovable. Maybe you have also experienced feelings of loneliness, powerlessness, helplessness, and abandonment. Yes, there are so many issues that ultimately become frozen within us as traumatic experiences. Yes. And these are also lies. Yes, misunderstandings, lies, yes. And that is also an instability that is now being swept along. And that is very powerful. This sweeping away, this tearing away and knocking the feet out from under you, that is very powerful. Thus, someone might suddenly find themselves in a moment of realization where they feel like the ground has been pulled out from under them, and they sit down thinking, oh crap, I didn't actually understand these connections. It could be memories that resurface, but it could be that someone tells you something you didn't know, and it changes your entire history, because suddenly a missing piece of the puzzle makes everything appear in a different light. Or yes. Or you will simply notice as an affected person that you were lied to, that you were deceived. So all such things. And many similar ones can now emerge, because this very powerful energy is ultimately very positive, as it wants to wash away everything that is not stable, not sustainable. 2001, and even if it might feel a bit unsettling at first, please know that ultimately it all has a very positive purpose, especially for all those who are on their journey of awareness and consciousness. Yes, the less conscious one is, the less one might recognize the positive impacts that some challenging experiences can have. And the more conscious you are, the more you realize, okay, a challenge or a problem is ultimately just a challenge. And if you recognize the challenge, then you can accept it and make the best out of it. So it is very powerful and very strong. This is a very positive effect, even though it brings a feeling of being overwhelmed, and not just through the processes of 2001, but also through the many topics that are currently flooding us. For example, today is Tuesday, for example. I had a really intense day yesterday on Monday. And by the way, all those in my bubble, meaning those I know and have spoken to, it was one of those days where I worked all day, but didn't accomplish anything, because I was somehow being directed and occupied from all sides. A little thing here, a little thing there. Can you do a thing? Take a look, unlock it. What are we doing with it? So there was really a day that was pretty crazy, and many people felt the same way. And I really thought to myself, man, just the day before, on Sunday, I released the podcast where I talked about it. It is so important to have goals at the moment, so that we have something to focus on, because so many influences from the outside, and also from the many news and many interesting topics, are coming to the surface now, and we are simply being tempted from all sides to get caught up in them. And that's why it's important to keep focus. Yes, I remembered, I thought, yesterday you roared well, lion, and today you're already caught up in the whirlpool of various influences. I then accepted it. The things that needed to be done were also important. And this morning I woke up with a different mindset, with a different focus. I also went to bed early the night before last, and again early last night. So I could really gather myself and understand that it's about regaining focus. Yes, and I just want to remind you once again, this is the podcast episode from Sunday, 2001. It's very important at the moment to not let focus goals get scattered. I have received some messages from you, some publicly in the chat, but also some via email, where there was a big question mark. Others who predict something, that's what I call it, or share spiritual content. They talk about something completely different. Now would be the time to do nothing and quote, find peace. Why are you talking about goals and staying focused? It's actually quite the opposite. I perceive it that way, and it has ultimately been confirmed, and it continues to be confirmed, and I just know that it's right. Of course, you can always decide for yourself what feels right for you. It doesn't have to be what resonates with me, but it's simply a fact that the energy is picking up a very, very high speed. And of course, it is true that high speed also demands the highest mindfulness. And so perhaps both statements are correct. Those who say, hey, it's important to go inward now and clean up internally, is something I always say, by the way. Yes, for me that is simply the highest truth, but also about setting goals and focus and addressing your topics. Yes, but mindfulness, Dhamma, doesn't mean that you just lie on the couch and do nothing. Yes, quite the opposite. It's about doing the things you do with mindfulness and ultimately also with focus. Yes, a high energy speed naturally brings a high speed in external matters as well, and that means you have to exercise the highest mindfulness. Perhaps even an even higher level of mindfulness. That's why I say utmost mindfulness, because ultimately you also have to account for the overwhelm or distraction, sometimes even the stupidity of others, who cross your path or your timeline, where your timelines overlap and you come into contact with each other. Yes, the mistakes of others can quickly become your own misfortune. Yes, but within this time that we have now entered, there lies an incredible opportunity, and that is an opportunity to heal, because so much is being shaken loose now. Things that don't really belong to us are being washed away, and untruths are being healed. There is also the possibility to retrieve soul fragments that have split off from us at some point. So this is a very, very deep healing journey for some, a healing crisis that is now about to take us on this journey. This invitation has already been extended. Most are already in it. And these split off parts, and we simply need to understand these soul fragments. How do such things come about? And here we go back to childhood once again. Let's stay really in this life of 2001, that when you experience a traumatic event as a child, it is so painful for you that you cannot endure it emotionally, physically, and psychologically. These are such intense pains that tear your heart apart, making you feel like you won't survive it, that you can't endure it in your body, and then something happens, then it splits, then we split off from it, simply to protect ourselves, so that this pain stops. This happens automatically, our system does it, and then something is truly split off. That's why most people can't really feel the pain that was there back then, or even truly remember it. That's why many people feel, oh yes, I have that, that's just how it is for me, it belongs to the past. And it is important that we retrieve the soul fragments, that we simply move through this separation and retrieve the soul part, this traumatized, separated part, to heal and integrate it. Only then can we move forward. There's no other way. And this is just the time that seems so chaotic at times, and where you also feel like the whole world, it's just not normal anymore. It just can't be. It just can't be normal. Ultimately, it's simply that we realize that all of this, what has been done to us or what we have experienced, is not normal, and that we are not all that we believe ourselves to be today, and that we can now bring about a retrieval, a completion, a healing here. That is one aspect. That fits it very nicely. And this retrieval, this completion, this wholeness is just so incredibly important for so many reasons. And I don't want to name them all right now, because many of the reasons why this is important probably come to your mind spontaneously. But I would like to address a topic that is often overlooked, because one reason is also to learn or be able to distinguish the lie from the truth, because that is becoming increasingly difficult. The further we progress, the more difficult it will become. Where are we supposed to be directed? And if we just take a look at the world, then if we really look at it from a bird's eye view and don't focus on the individual details. Then you can see, if you really fly up high, how the people down there, like sheep, like a flock of sheep, first all run in one direction, then all run in the other direction, and then all run in that direction again, and all run in that direction, and some run here, some run there, then they fight each other, but then they still run somewhere, and then they run after the next prophet, and the next president, or the next minister, and the next fear, and the next one who has a solution against the fear, and the crash prophet, or the savior. There is always some kind of steering going on, and the question is, well, who is doing the steering? Who is doing the steering? And is the one who is steering, is he obvious? Does one know who it is that is happening worldwide? Yes, just look, this is happening worldwide. It's a steering, a transformation, a change. Yes, is this now God who is steering? I dare to doubt that. Many people have done that. So there is a person or a small group of people or an energy, a force field, which directs but does not reveal itself. And it's always so concerning when strings are being pulled from the background and those doing it don't really reveal themselves, and also the plans, why things are being directed, what all this is supposed to be good for. We somehow have to do some guessing. And the question is simply, how do you steer best? Do you steer by openly stating the challenging plans that are being pursued? No, you steer through manipulation. Yes, that would have structured the entire world system through manipulation, through promises that are ultimately not kept, or through things that are brought about so that everyone is against them, and then voluntarily chooses something, just to vote out what they don't want. That means, quite often, topics are brought into play that we know the public will oppose, and they are deliberately steered in a direction. Specifically, the direction we want them to go. So why am I saying this now? And especially in such a convoluted or complex way, without naming anything specific, because we don't even know if what we are for isn't also being consciously directed, that we are consciously directed towards what we believe in. We are indeed for peace. Let's see what happens with this wanting, what we stand for. Yes, what is so sneakily put right in front of us, and what power structures are built up as a result. We simply do not have the ability to look ahead to the year 2001, and I would especially advise against predictions. Because if we take a look at the word prediction, we must already recognize that it is indeed also a lie, because a prediction is a foretelling. That means, I say beforehand, I say in advance, I summon it forth, I put it into the field, I bring the absolute into the field, and it is like a command that it then also manifests. That's why prophecies and predictions know that they are foretellings. Think very carefully about which prediction you listen to, which prediction you align yourself with, and which prediction you let shape your opinion, so that you then feel like you have formed an opinion yourself. And in the rarest cases, do we form our own opinions? We are so manipulated, we are so driven by the most diverse aspects. There aren't just the bad and the good, there are so many things that shape you and form your opinion. That's why it's always very important to acquire knowledge. Yes, really solid background knowledge, as it is the foundation on which every further message falls. And then you can understand them in a completely different way. The less we know, the less educated we are on a certain topic. When a piece of news falls on that ground, we have no choice but to be manipulated. And so it is really, really important. I'm closing the loop now and coming back to it. It is so important that you clean up within yourself, that you become whole again, that you thereby also lose your fears, become more self-confident, know your potentials, know your goals, know your values, and know your direction. And from this mental and emotional state, you can also inform yourself about things that really interest you. 2001, which you find worth knowing for yourself, also consulting background knowledge, trying to capture the whole picture as well as possible. And then you can handle much better whatever keeps coming into the field which you are being directed by. Whether it's through an alternative news source, mainstream news, some crashes, changes happening in the world, conversations with others, whatever it is, whatever comes into your life, you can respond differently because you can free yourself a bit from what others think. Yes, and you can really walk your path very powerfully. And with that, we come to a very, very important point, yes, that you become free. Free yourself from crash prophets, from general prophets, from any promises of salvation, but also from fear-mongering and from your own inner convictions. I worked with a client over the weekend, and I noticed that when she talked about her deficiencies, she always said, I can't do this, or for me, this and that is always like this. These are also predictions. They are born out of a conviction because she has experienced that things are always such and such, and that she is such and such. There are her weaknesses. But when we phrase it like that, especially everything we phrase so absolutely, it is indeed a prediction. How is anything supposed to change this way? This means being mindful, focusing on healing, so that these beliefs can change and you can bring forth other things. That is very important. So if you've listened to me up to this point and really feel like, wow, there's something to this, and you're relating all these statements to your personal life, then I sense that you need to become even more mindful. Then I tell you, as if all that wasn't enough, I now want to round off the confusion to a completion. Yes, from my point of view, to a complete completion. I would like to round off all this chaos and what is now needed within you and what is happening in the world and what we can all recognize with a quote from Hermann Hesse. And this quote says, "There is no other reality in 2001 than the one we have within us." That means when we talk about others and everything that is happening out there, in a way there are no others. It is everything that you have within you. And that's why healing is so incredibly important, because all of this reality, is only what you have within you. Yes, you can understand it to that extent now. Some can understand it very deeply, down to the fine and non-material areas. Some might understand it more in terms of this mirror principle. Know that you are the world. You are the dreamer who dreams all of this. You are the thought, the eternal thought that never fades. You are not flesh and blood. You are the one who dreams all of this. Let's dream better dreams. Let's think better thoughts, shall we? I am really looking forward to your comment. Feel free to follow me on Instagram. With love, the very, very best for you. Your sister in spirit, your Linda, 2001.